Recording is
And I think
on.
that will start us off. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Coffey. I'm the Grants and Research Coordinator for Arts Culture Catawba. Joining me this morning is our Executive Director, Ingrid Keller. So, this is the first session of the day for our Fall Grants Workshop. We're going to be talking about the Projects Pool Grant, which is a grant for nonprofit organizations primarily for innovative arts projects. At 10 o'clock, we'll be talking about the Artist Support Grant, which is a grant for artists. So to begin with, let's see. So today we're gonna go through the guidelines, and then we're gonna go through the online application process. So before we get into that, though, let's see. I did just want to point out this is like a fall. Typically, Projects Pool is a grant that we do in the spring every year. We actually had some leftover funds, so we're holding a second round this fall. So it's almost, think of it like a continuation from the spring. This grant is going to be still in this fiscal year. So this is for projects taking place between July 2024 and June 2025. Basically, by the time this grant process goes through, it'll be for projects happening in the spring, basically. So let's jump in then. So we're going to go through the guidelines first, and then we'll go into the application. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So this is our grants page. We've recently updated this. There's some new things on here you might see. We got our featured grants here at the top that tell what grants are currently active in this cycle. So going down to Projects Pool, you can see here, and I do want to make that clear. We have an extra fall cycle this year. Typically, the grants happen in the spring. So we're still going to have our normal spring cycle. It's going to be due on March 20th. But this is just an extra round that we're doing to give out the remaining funds from this year's cycle. So let's look at the guidelines first. Okay, so Arts Culture Catawba awards Projects Pool grants to nonprofit organizations. These grants are made available by the North Carolina General Assembly through the North Carolina Arts Council's Grassroots Arts Program. Allocations are based on population figures. In Catawba County, Arts Culture Catawba is the designated county partner, as nominated by Catawba County Commissioners. So additional dollars from local government are budgeted to Arts Culture Catawba from the county and the county's municipalities. The goals of the program are to enhance and strengthen the cultural community and broaden the services offered to Catawba County citizens. So basically this grant, it comes from the Grassroots Arts Program, which is from the NC Arts Council. We get that grassroots money from them, and then we get it matched locally by county and municipalities. And that's the funding source for our Projects Pool grant. So applications must be submitted via the online application form by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, October the 8th, 2024. And applicants should be prepared to appear before the Projects Pool grant panel on Monday, October 14th, 2024. So online applications will be due by that date, and then you would come in for an in-person presentation basically on the October 14th date. So after the applications are turned in, I will send out a schedule to everyone about what time slots you would be coming in to present. It probably will run from morning, maybe around 9 a.m. until lunch, 12 p.m. or so. Okay, so let's go through the guidelines. So who can apply? Like I said, this is primarily for nonprofits. There are a few exceptions to that. So organizations must have a 501c3 federal tax exempt status. The applicant doesn't necessarily need to have a mission that is primarily artistic or cultural. And if a nonprofit does not have a 501c3 and wishes to apply to Projects Pool, it must secure as fiscal agent another organization with this status. So if you are not a 501c3 organization, you'll probably just want to talk to us, and we'll need to figure out how that would work. So organizations must have been active 1 year prior to making an application and be governed by a representative board, which is not self-perpetuating. So here's some of the exceptions I talked about. Colleges, universities, community colleges, and technical institutes may apply if the project will be community-based, will generate area-wide cultural involvement, and will not be an internal program. So in the cases of colleges, it just doesn't need to be an internal school program for students only. If a college is putting on some kind of performance or some kind of public event, then that would be applicable. And schools may also apply for funds for innovative arts education projects. So talking about the local school districts and grade schools, they can also apply if it's an arts education project. So organizations outside of Catawba County may apply if the proposed project takes place in Catawba County. Individual artists are not eligible to apply to projects pool. Grantees may contract with individual artists whose services fall within the scope of the project, though. So the organizations can hire artists, but we can't give the money directly to artists. This is a grant for organizations. And okay, this is important. Priorities. Priority for funding is first given to qualified arts, science, and history organizations, including theaters, symphonies, galleries, arts guilds, choral societies, dance companies, folk art, etc. Second priority is for arts learning and arts and education programs. And the third priority is for community, civic, and municipal organizations. So that is who can apply for this. And I'll take questions at the end if anyone has any questions about whether they're applicable to apply for this or not. So going into funding, grassroots funds must be matched dollar for dollar with cash raised locally and spent on the same project during the same fiscal year for which funding is requested. Essentially, that means we do require a one-to-one match for our grant. So if you were to receive a grant for $10,000, you would also need to have another $10,000 committed to that project. And your total project budget would need to at least be $20,000, if that makes sense. So these matching funds need not be in hand at the time of the application, but can be anticipated. So in-kind contributions cannot replace cash for matching purposes, but can be documented as supplemental evidence of support. So in-kind being like, for example, maybe volunteer hours or like a donated space or somewhere you're not paying rent on or anything. You can count that in your budget, but you can't use it for the match, if that makes sense. Whenever we get into the project budget section, I can go into more detail about that. An organization may submit only 2 applications per granting period. But Ingrid, I think it's still a max of 10,000 total for the year. Is that right? Even if they submit 2?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, yeah. So you can submit 2 applications, but you can only do a total of 10,000 for the whole year. And remember, this is a second round. So we're still counting counting from the spring. This is the 24-25 fiscal year within that period. No projects pool funds may be used to match another grant from the NC Arts Council. The same matching funds may not be used for more than one projects pool or Arts Culture Catawba grant. Funds may not be used for deficit funding. Funds may not be used for permanent personnel, capital expenditures, logo development, cash awards, food and beverage for entertaining, tuition, or fundraising events. And then all funds must be administered in compliance with the Fair Labor Act, Title VI of Civil Rights Act, Section 504 Rehabilitation Act, Title IX of the Education Amendment, if applicable. So applicants may apply for a maximum of $10,000. A cash request form is required to receive funds. This is important here too. So 1/2 of the grant award may be requested prior to the project date, and the remaining half may be requested upon completion of the project with the submission of the final report form. This has been in our guidelines for a few years now, but we are enforcing that a little more strictly going forward. So if you were to receive a projects pool grant from us, you would have to request half of your amount first. And then upon completion of the project, whenever you submit the final report, that's when the second half would be distributed. Okay, so going into the application process, applicants must submit a completed application through the link on our website, and you'll get an email telling you after you submit it, you'll get an email that bounces back that says, you've submitted your application, and it'll give you a copy of all of your answers, just so you'll have all that you can put on file. If you don't get some kind of email like that, then reach out to us, because that means we probably didn't get your application either. So required attachments include a complete income and expense statement for your last fiscal year and complete operating budgets for the current year and for next year. So basically, we want the financials from the last fiscal year, the current, and the next. Okay, so talking about the criteria and the review process, one granting period will take place each fiscal year, and projects must take place within this time frame. As I mentioned before, that's July 1, 2024 to June 15, 2025, because we're still in this fiscal year. Project's pool review process includes a committee review of all applications and an interview with each applicant's organization whose proposal meets the guidelines. Applicants must send at least one representative to the interview. So that's the grant panel that I was talking about earlier, which is on October the 14th. So if you're applying for a project's pool grant, then for this cycle, just go ahead and plan to keep that day free, or at least that morning free, for you or someone from your organization to come and present their project. Okay. And Projects Pool Committee reserves the right to designate funding for specific elements of a project. If the Projects Pool Committee or the applicant decides to modify in any way, a revised budget and a program description must be submitted prior to the disbursement of funds. So yeah, basically, if there's any changes to the project, then we just need to know about it. Okay, so let's talk about some of the eligibility requirements for the project itself. It must be open to a broad segment of the community and directly benefit Catawba County. Cannot be duplicated through other agencies. It should invite participation from the general public, in addition to the organization's own membership. And it must be new and innovative, although existing projects or season subscription regular offerings in need of assistance and meeting the guidelines can be eligible. What this is basically saying is we would, this grant prefers, our committee is going to be preferring new projects and new innovative things that are happening. If you are applying for some kind of existing program, it could technically be eligible, but as it says here at the end, awards made for ongoing projects are likely to decline over a period of years. Okay, and there must be some, if you are applying for some kind of existing program, there must be some kind of expansion or innovation to it. Okay, so getting into the merit section, these are things our committee would value from your project. So there's a lot of points here. I'm not going to go through all of these. You can read these in our guidelines, but these are things that would be good to, if your project has any of these elements in them, it would definitely be good to include it in your application so that our committee would know about it. Things like strong community support, involvement of professional artists, etc. So like I said, I won't go through all that. It's a lot. Okay, so if funded, each grant recipient will be required to sign a contract with us and make every reasonable effort to publicize their projects. A final report is mandatory. Like I said before, this year we're being more strict about the way that the funds are being dispersed. So we actually would need your final report before we give the second half of the grant to you. And grant recipients include in all publicity, promotions, and printed programs the appropriate credit line as stated in the contract. So we'll send that stuff to you whenever you get your award. We'll send an award letter that tells you the requirements there. I do just want to say really quickly, it's very important to also credit the NC Arts Council with their logo and their tagline along with us, because this money is coming from the Grassroots Arts Fund, which is a state program. So I have to turn in a final report to them and include attachments of people's projects that have credited them properly. So I just want to make sure going forward that we definitely include them in all of our projects. Okay, so that was the guidelines. Let's see, let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the application itself.
Hey, Chris.
Yep.
Can I ask you a quick question before you go through the application?
Yeah, let's take a quick moment to have any questions about the guidelines. What you got?
So, based on what you said, but I want to make sure I'm interpreting this right. If we applied in the spring and received a Projects Pool grant for $10,000, then we're not even eligible to apply again now. Is that right?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, well then I'm going to drop off. This has been fun, but I don't
No,
know.
you're good. You're good. We're gonna do another one. Like I said, we'll do it in the spring. So I got
Yeah,
the spring dates on the website already. It's gonna be
yeah.
due March 20th. You guys will be eligible to apply again in the spring, but this fall
Abs-
one's just a continuance of the last one. So
Okay, absolutely. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that when you said that, I was like, oh, well, I don't think I need to even listen to this, but I wanted to make
yeah, no, you're good.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
So, Chris, I have a question. When you're talking about the funding, you want information from last year, this year, and next year? Because I don't, you're talking 25, 26 budget year. Is that correct?
Actually, so I'm going to go through the application now and we'll talk about that, but
Okay.
I'll show you real quick just to answer that question. It is a little different because, again, it's a little unusual with this being a fall cycle. So I made sure to change the application to specify just the specific years that we need because we're still going as if the application is still going to be the same as it was in the spring because we wanted to keep it consistent. So we're asking for the 22-23 income and expense statement, and then the 23-24 fiscal year operating budget, and then the 24-25 operating budget. Sorry, I lost my place there. It's 23-24 and then 24-25. So typically we ask for, again, in the spring that would have been last year, current year, next year. And then next spring, it'll be 23-24, 24-25, 25-26. But because this is just a continuance from the spring one, we're just asking for 22-23, 23-24, 24-25. Sorry, I get mixed up too with all. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions before we move into the application portion? All right. So let's look at the application. It is a little bit different. We were using a program called JotForms last year, and this year we're actually doing it more of an in-house application. So it's actually hosted on our website now. It's still the same questions. It just looks a little different. So you can see here, I haven't posted the application yet. I think it opens on September 9th, technically. So I don't have the link to it yet, but I do have a sample application that will pull up a PDF, and you can see all of the questions there. But I'm gonna go ahead and go in through the admin page so you guys can see what it'll look like. Okay, so I'll go through this pretty quickly here. So we just have organization information, a contact person and their title, mailing address, work phone, email, website, all that kind of stuff. The organization's EIN number, which y'all should all have one of those. Some may not have the UEI. We didn't make. We did make that optional just because some organizations don't have that. Applicant race, and then a description of the organization. You can see here I gave instructions for what to include in that: mission, board, staff composition, etc. Then this question: are you planning to apply, or have you already received a grant directly from the NC Arts Council for 24-25? Because again, like we went over in the guidelines, the NC Arts Council, the projects pool comes from state money, so we can't have conflicts there with giving out state money and then you're also receiving state money for the same project. So organizational finance section, like we just talked about a minute ago, we're going to go off of the 22-23 year. So an income and expense statement or an audit, you can upload that here. You can either drag it into this or browse through your files to find that. And then we just ask that you put the total numbers here in these places. Then it's the same thing for the 23-24 operating budget. You can drag and drop that in there, put those numbers here, and then the 24-25 budget as well. So getting into the projects part, you'll put your grant amount requested here. Let's say 10,000. And then your start dates, your end dates. Again, I want to keep hammering on that. This is for this current fiscal year. So if you're applying this fall, the project has to end by June 15th, 2025. So this is really just a continuance from the spring one we did. We're going to hold another round of this in the spring. That'll be for the 25-26 year. So, okay. So you'll include your project narrative here with the title or a short description. You'll put your project goals here, description of intended participants audience, including estimated numbers, racial and cultural composition, anything there that you think would be pertinent to that question, location where the project will take place, description of project activities, description of artists to be involved in the project, how and why they were chosen, and if appropriate, the rate of payment for their services. And as it says here, if you haven't selected the artist yet, then just describe the kind of artist you intend to involve and what your selection process will look like. And then a description of how the project will be publicized and promoted to reach intended participants, and then how you'll evaluate the project. Okay, so that's the narrative section. Moving next into the budget. So this is the budget specifically for the project that you're applying for. Let's see, it says here, you'll basically break it down into these provided categories. And there's 2 columns for you to enter for expenses, because you'll put the specific expenses that the grant is paying for in this column, and then any additional expenses for the whole project in this column. So, I put earlier for this example that we're applying for $10,000 for this grant. So let's say the artist's contract is $10,000 total. So maybe you want to put all of your grant into the artist contract, but you also have your space rental and marketing, let's say. Let's spend in a lot of marketing for some reason. So you would need to have at least a 1-to-1 match, and that will show down here, so you can make sure that you've got that match in place. Then this will give your total on the far right over here for 20,000. Now it has to be at least a 1-to-1 match. So I mean, it could be your project is way above what you're asking for in the grant, and that's fine. So let's say you got 20,000 in your own expenses, but then the grant is funding 10,000 of that, and that's fine. So then if you go down here, this is the project income. The grant amount gets pre-populated. I'll put 100,000. Hold on, let me go fix that. One less zero there. Okay, so that grant amount gets pre-populated there, and you'll just need to explain where this other 20,000 is coming from, basically. So if that's, let's say you have like a corporate sponsor also that's giving you 10,000, and then the rest of it's just coming out of pocket, so applicant cash. So that total cash income just needs to equal the total cash expenses, basically. You just got to explain how you're covering your costs. Okay, and then that takes us through the budget. The last section here is just the certification. The authorizing official will sign here, signature of the contact person. If that's a different person, that's like, let's say you have someone filling out the application, but then you need someone like it's actually an authorizing official to sign off on it. That's where you would do that. And then you'd submit. There's also a save function. I should probably explain how that works too. So we have we just built this form for our website. This is kind of a new thing for us. So if you don't have an account already on our website, I'm already signed in to the admin account, but if you were to go onto this page, there will be a thing that pops up at the top that says, before beginning your application, you can create an account if you wish to save your application and come back to it later. And once you create that account, then you get this Save for Later button. And so you just click on that. And so now every time you come back to our website, you can log in and go to my dashboard. Mine's going to look a little different because, again, I'm in the admin account. But you'll have this same bubble down here, incomplete grant and scholarship applications. So you would click on that, and it'll show you any applications that you were working on. So you can go back in and continue them. So yeah, that's how that works. Okay. So that's pretty much covers the online application. Let me go ahead and get out my screen sharing.
I have a question.
Yeah, absolutely. What you got?
Yeah. So the scenario that I'm thinking about is that, for example, I have a quote for something for $10,000. I ask you for 5. I've only gotten 1 of my 3 quotes. I end up choosing somebody that comes in at $9,000, but it's after I get granted, right? And does that just get taken out in the second? Like, you would give me half the money up front, and then we'd make it work for the $9,000 at the end, or how would that work?
So I can help answer that, Chris. So Vince, most of the time, these are for whole projects. So you're building in your other costs that are involved in the project. So like the marketing, the the administration time can be like 25% of the budget. So you're building that in. So it's always a good idea to build in more matching so that you don't run into that kind of situation.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Like,
Yep.
So even if it's like the strict cost of you're trying to just get us to help pay for an artist, and the artist is maybe you've negotiated, maybe now it's going to be $9,000 with the travel because you're able to have them stay with somebody locally. Well, then build that into your other costs, like your marketing, your administration, the supplies that you might have to buy, production costs, that kind of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Does anyone else have any other questions? All right. So if no one has any other questions, that's really all we had to cover today. So yeah, if anyone, especially anyone watching this back later, I know we're going to post this recording on YouTube later. If anyone has any questions about this, I know it's one of our more complex grant application processes. So you can always reach out to us. Let's see. Actually, let me share.
So I have a quick question. What if you have 2 projects that are art driven?
Mhm.
Can you request that under one thing, one grant application? So for instance, if you were trying to bring somebody in from for a Black History Month monologue, I'll basically call that. And then, of course, we do our folk art festival, and I've got a specific artist that I'm trying to have come in. So it's 2 separate things. Can I ask for that under one grant application, or does it need to be 2 separate?
I mean,
If it's part of a series, Mary, like if it's a series of programs that you're presenting, that can be one application. Like if it's all under the Music on Main series,
Gotcha.
you could do that under one. But to me, the Folk Art Festival and then what you're talking about are 2 totally different events, and those should be 2 applications.
Okay, got it.
Because they're going to have 2 different project budgets.
Yes, they will. Okay, just making sure I completely understand.
Sure. Great. Okay. Well, we're going to have artist support grant coming up next. I didn't prepare slides for today's, but shoot. Sorry, I'm trying to get this slide pulled up. Getting the last slide of this presentation up. There it is. And then how do I share my screen again? There we go. There it is. Okay. So if anyone has any questions, you can always reach out to me at grants@artscatawba.org, or you can give me a call there at 828-324-4906, extension 306. And yeah, so if y'all have any questions, just feel free to reach out about it. And all right. Thank you guys all for attending today.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. All right. I guess you can go ahead and cut that recording.